Ladies and gentlemen, John Lewis.
Thank you very much. Marvin, thank you for those kind words of introduction. Thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. I must tell you that I'm delighted, very happy, and very pleased to be here. Thank you so much, my beloved brothers and sisters. I want to thank my colleague, my friend, my brother, your congressperson. You're more than lucky. You're very best, very, very blessed to have Emmanuel Cleaver as your congressperson. He is the best. To be here tonight in Kansas City, to be here as you salute and honor James B. Nutter for his leadership, his vision, and for his dedication. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for speaking up, for speaking out, for doing the right thing. To be here in the presence of Henry Bloch, my friend, my brother. You don't know this, you probably don't know this, but you and your family have supported me in some of my campaigns, and I want to say thank you. Thank you. Now, I know this was not supposed to be a political night, and I'm not going to say anything about politics. I leave that for Emmanuel and others. It is true that I grew up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, as you saw on the film, outside of a place called Troy. Yes, my father had been a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. And it's true that in 1944, when I was only 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4, that my father had saved $300, and with the $300, he bought 110 acres of land. And my family still own that farm and own that land today. On this farm, we raised a lot of cotton, corn, peanuts, a lot of chickens, some cows. On the farm, it was my responsibility to care for the chickens. And I fell in love with raising chickens like no one else could raise chicken. I'm glad we didn't have chicken tonight, because it probably would have been a problem for me. I know most of you here in Kansas City, here in the heart of the Midwest, you don't know anything about raising chickens. Some of you can raise a little fuss, stir up a little trouble from time to time, but you don't know anything about raising chickens. You know about Popeyes or Kentucky Fried, but you don't know anything about raising chicken. As a little boy, let me tell you what I had to do. I had to take the fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Some of you may be saying, now, John Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen would get on that same nest, and there would be some more eggs. And you have to be able to tell the fresher eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Do you follow me? It's okay you don't follow me, it's all right. When these little chicks were hatched, I would fool these setting hens. I would take these little chicks away from the hen and put them in a box with a lantern, raise them on their own, or give them to another hen, but get some more fresh eggs and mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, encourage the setting hen to stay in the nest for another 3 weeks. That was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the most loving thing to do, not the most nonviolent thing to do. It was not the most democratic thing to do. But the problem, I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive incubator or hatcher from the Susan Roebuck store. Are any of you old enough to remember the Susan Roebuck catalog? Yet that big book, heavy book, some people call it the ordering book. Other people call it the wish book. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. So I just kept on wishing. But as a young child, about 9 or 10 years old, I wanted to be a minister. I wanted to preach. So from time to time, with the help of my brothers and sisters and my cousins, we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard, like together here in this big room. And my brothers and sisters and cousins would line the outside, but around the chicken yard. And I would start speaking or preaching. And when I look back on it, some of these chickens would bow their heads. Some of these chickens would shake their heads. They never quite said amen. But I'm convinced, Emmanuel, that some of those chickens that I preached to in the 40s and the 50s tended to listen to me much better than some of our colleagues listen to us today. As a matter of fact, some of those chickens was a little more productive. At least they produce eggs. Well, that's enough of that story. Growing up there outside of Troy, when we would visit the little town of Troy, visit Montgomery, visit Tuskegee, visit Birmingham, I saw those signs that said white men, colored men, white women, colored women, white waiting, colored waiting. And I would ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why? And they would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way. Don't get in trouble. I would visit the little town of Troy. And I remember as a young child, there was a little department store on the corner, Rosenberg Department Store, that my parents and others would go and shop. And I remember some of the whites in the little town of Troy in Pike County, Alabama, the way they would use the word Jew was almost like using the N-word. So I grew up trying to avoid saying Jew because it was, for me, it was negative. The way I heard it repeated over and over again. And I always tried to say Jewish this or Jewish that. Asked my mother, asked my father, why? And they said, boy, that's the way it is. Don't get in trouble. Don't get in the way. But in 1955, 15 years old in the 10th grade, I heard about Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on our radio. And the action of Rosa Parks, the leadership, and the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. inspired me to find a way to get in the way. Growing up in church, I've heard over and over, and reading the scripture, I've heard over and over people comparing the struggle of African American to members of the Jewish community. We would sing songs, go down Moses, way down in Egypt land, and tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. So I grew up as a child, as a student, as a participant in the movement, as being concerned about the plight of the Jewish community in America and around the world. As a student in school in Nashville at the age of 17, we started studying the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence, studying the great religions of the world, studying what Gandhi attempted to do in South Africa and what he accomplished in India, studying Thoreau in civil disobedience, Early on, I wrote a letter to Martin Luther King Jr. When I was 17. I didn't tell my mother, my father, any of my sisters or brothers, any of my teachers. I wrote a letter to him and told him I needed his help. He wrote me back and sent me a round-trip Greyhound bus ticket. And I often think if it hadn't been for Martin Luther King Jr., hadn't been for people teaching me the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence, to stand up, to speak up, to speak out, to get in what I call trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. I don't know what would have happened to me. I felt called, moved by what I call the spirit of history, to become involved and not be silent. It was in the city of Nashville, Tennessee, 17 years old, when I met Rosa Parks. And as you saw in the video, in 1958, Dr. King invited me to come to Montgomery to meet with him. I met him. These two individuals changed my life, and I have not looked back. During the height of the Civil Rights Movement, many members of the Jewish community stood with us, fought with us, marched with us, and some even died with us. We can never, ever forget the three young civil rights workers, Anna Goodman, and Micah Schwerner, and James Chaney, two young Jewish men from New York and a young African-American man from Mississippi. These three young men, riding in a car on the night of June 21st, 1964, went out to investigate the burning of an African-American church because many of the churches were used for voter registration workshops, meeting places. They were stopped by the sheriff, arrested, taken to jail, later released from jail, turned over to the Klan, where they were beaten, shot, and killed. I tell young people all across America that these three young men didn't die in Vietnam. They didn't die in the Middle East. They didn't die in Eastern Europe or Africa or Central or South America. They died right here in our own country, trying to help create a better society. There's a group of us in the Congress trying to get the Postal Service to issue a stamp in their name because they were the founding fathers of the new America. Next year will be 50 years that they left us. Blacks and Jews gave some blood together in Mississippi, in Alabama, and other parts of the Deep South. So, as people, we have an obligation, a mission, and a mandate to do whatever we can to bring down the walls of bitterness, the walls of separation, and we must say to the larger society, there cannot be any room in our society for bigotry, for anti-Semitism, for we all live in the same house, not just the American house, but the world house. Yes, we have come a distance in laying down the burden of race, but the scars and stains of racism, anti-Semitism, and bigotry still exist in America, in Europe, and other parts of this world, on this little planet, on this little spaceship we call Earth. And none of us, not one of us, can rest, be happy, or be at home, or at peace with ourselves till we end division and hatred towards someone because of their race, their color, nationality, because of their religion, or because of sexual orientation. One people, one family, one house. I tell you, during the height of the movement, I met a young man named Daniel Lyons. He was a great photographer. He was working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Cairo, Illinois. This is where the Ohio and the Mississippi River come together. It was like being in the Delta of Mississippi or in the Black Belt of Alabama. This young man was born in Forest Hills, New York, Jewish, met his parents, his mother, his father. He graduated from the University of Chicago. He came to Cairo and later to the South with a camera. He said, I'm a pretty good photographer. I want to help. I want to record what happened. He became a staff of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And some of the major images that you see all across America today were taken by this young Jewish man. We became brothers. We became friends. And many of the young Jewish students that marched, that worked in Mississippi, in Alabama, in Georgia, all across the South and all across America, we all became a circle of trust, a band of brothers and sisters. There are forces in America that want to take us back to another period. We have to say we've come too far. We made too much progress to turn back. We must continue to go forward as one people, as brothers and sisters. I want to thank you as members of JCRB and AJC for going to the South, going there, seeing what happened and how it happened. We all can learn, we all can grow and move forward. On March 7, 1965, I had all of my hair, a few pounds lighter, 25 years old, when I was asked, along with Jose Williams, of Dr. King's organization, to lead the attempted march from Selma to Montgomery. You notice I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear backpacks. I thought we were going to be arrested and we were going to go to jail, so in this backpack, I had 2 books. I wanted to have something to read. I wanted to have something to eat. I had 1 apple and 1 orange. 1 apple and 1 orange wouldn't last that long. Since I thought we would be arrested and we would be in jail, I'd be in there with my friends and colleagues. I had toothpaste and toothbrush. I wanted to be able to brush my teeth. We get to the edge of the Epipettus Bridge, crossing the Alabama River. Jose Williams said to me, "John, can you swim?" I said, "No, what about you?" He said, "A little." I said, "Well, there's too much water down there. We're not going to jump. We're going forward." And we continued to walk, men, women, and children. Came to the highest point on the Epipettus Bridge. Down below, we saw a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. We came within hearing distance of the state troopers, as you saw in the video. The major said this was an unlawful march. It would not be allowed to continue. You must return to your homes or to your church. And Jose Williams said, "Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray." And before we can pass word back for people to kneel and pray, the major said, "Troopers, advance." And they did come toward us. beating us, tear gassing us, trampling us with horses. I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to die. But I believe somehow, in some way, the Almighty kept me here and spared me for a purpose. And that's why I feel so driven to get out and push and use the time to say we must create a beloved community, that we must redeem not only America, but we must redeem or help redeem our little planet. And we can do it. If in America we can emerge as a model, maybe the rest of the world will join us and create a truly multiracial democratic society. So tonight I'm saying to you, it doesn't matter whether we're black or Jewish. It doesn't matter whether we're Latino, or Asian American, or Native American. It doesn't matter whether we're straight or gay. We all are in the same boat. As April Randolph would say from time to time, just maybe our foremothers and our forefathers all came to this great country in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. I want to tell you a little story, because I know for some of you it's been a long day, a long night. When I was growing up outside of Troy, Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, I had an aunt by the name of Seneva. And my Aunt Seneva lived on what we call a shotgun, in a shotgun house. She didn't have a green manicured lawn, had a simple plain dirt yard. I know here in Kansas City, here in the heart of the Midwest, you have never seen a shotgun house. You don't even know what I'm talking about. Every Friday, she would get out and cut branches from a dogwood tree and tie these branches together and make a broom. And she called that broom the breast broom. And she would sweep this dirt yard very clean because she wanted that dirt yard to look good on the weekend. For those of you who may not know what a shotgun house is, in a nonviolent sense, an old house, one way in, one way out, maybe a tin roof, where you can bounce a basketball through the front door and it will go straight out the back door. My Aunt Seneva lived in a shotgun house. But one Saturday afternoon, a group of my brothers and sisters and first cousins, about 12 or 15 of us young children, were out playing in my Aunt Seneva dirt yard, and an unbelievable storm came up. The wind started blowing, the thunder started rolling, the lightning started flashing, and the rain started beating on the tin roof of this old shotgun house. My aunt became terrified. She started crying. She thought the old house was going to blow away. She got all of us little children together and told us to hold hands. And when one corner of this old house appeared to be lifting from its foundation, she had us to walk to that side to try to hold the house down with our little bodies. When the other corner appeared to be lifted, she had us to walk to that corner. We were little children walking with the wind, but we never, ever left the house. I said to you tonight that the wind may blow, the thunder may roll, and lightning may flash, and the rain may beat on our old house. But people who believe in justice, who believe in freedom, who believe in democratic ideas, we cannot afford to stop now. We cannot afford to leave the house. So walk together, pray together, and fight the good fight together, and keep your eyes on the prize together. And we will tear down those walls and build one people, one nation. Thank you very much.